So how many of you out there have returned from your travels only to realize you have racked up some credit card debt because you didn't budget appropriately? Well, I've been there, and I'm here to share with you some ways to budget and track your travel expenses. I think by tracking them, you're going to find a huge difference in keeping yourself on track with that budget. Is fear holding you back from traveling because you don't have anyone to go with? Are you concerned about being a woman traveling alone and not sure how to prepare for a solo trip? Do family and friends think you are crazy for even considering solo travel? Well, in this podcast, you will become equipped to travel safely by yourself. You'll learn things like tactical travel tips and how to prepare for a trip and how to overcome the fear so you can discover the transformation that travel can bring. My mission is to see more women over 50 discover how travel can empower them. If you want to enjoy your next travel adventures solo, then start your journey here. Hello, sister travelers. I'm Cheryl, solo travel advocate and travel coach. I have experienced life-changing adventures through travel, and I want the same for you. So stay tuned here every week, and you will learn to find freedom through your travels, build your confidence while safely navigating new places. How many of you have come back from your trip and looked at your statement for your credit card and just shook your head, not sure why or how you accumulated so much debt when you thought you had really budgeted for this trip properly? Well, it happens to all of us, and I believe that it actually goes back and it starts at the beginning. So we need to, number one, to avoid kind of going over our budgets when we travel, is we actually need to set a realistic budget for ourselves and base our travel on that. Because let's say maybe your budget is only $2,000 for, I don't know, a 10-day trip somewhere. But in real life, that is, maybe you're going somewhere rather expensive, and that $2,000 might only get you 5 days. I don't know. Depends on accommodation cost and travel and how much the plane fare is. So you want to start first with looking realistically at your own personal ability to create a budget, meaning, look at what you're making. How much can you save is the point. I find that most people, and I've been there, we think we have enough saved before we go, or maybe we don't save and we think, oh, I'll catch up on the back end when I get back. It doesn't always work out that way, folks. So you want to make sure you're setting realistic budgets and goals even before you book your trip. So look at your budget. Can you be putting aside so much per month? Then once you have established that, then you're going to set your budget based on that for your whole trip. Let's just take the example of 1 week, all right? And you have budgeted $1,500, right? Well, as you do your research, as you refer back to episode 33 from last week, talking about how to research, you may discover that maybe that is not enough, and so you have to save some more. Or maybe you only want to stick with that, and therefore it determines where you travel to. Okay, so base your budget based on what you've saved, how much you can actually afford to spend. All right, that's number one. And the other thing you can consider is go back to episode 18 as well, and I give you tips and step-by-step on how to actually book a flight or plan your travels backwards so that you do save money. So if budget is an issue, go to those episodes and see what you can gather from them to help you with scheduling and booking your next trip. So we know, number two, we want to consider the big ticket items. All right, the number one big ticket items are airfare and accommodations, of course, right? And then you have some other larger categories such as meals and possibly transportation, depending on where you're going again. But let's talk about airfare. Again, referring back to, if you're flexible, like I mentioned in previous episodes, and you are on a strict budget, maybe you only want to spend $600 max on your airfare, then you're going to probably be limited as to maybe where you go, which is fine as long as you are flexible with that. And you may consider, of course, when you go, right? So big ticket items, airfares, there's also ways to use points. There's a point guys out there. There's lots of ways that you can kind of lower that fee, that budget line of airfare. Okay. And then accommodations. Accommodations are also a big thing. I go to booking.com to get an idea of what accommodations are going to cost in the destination where I'm going, right? That's important because we might live in one country, but have no understanding of how much accommodations might cost in another country. So you need to, of course, do research and get an idea, places to get those kind of ideas. Again, booking.com is just a great way to look at hotels and to see kind of what average in, maybe you're looking at hotels, or if you're looking at Airbnbs, things like that. You can look at those apps and see what the general price is. Put in your dates or make up some dates and just get an idea. Play with some dates too, because if you're in off season, as I mentioned before, a lot of things are going to be a lot cheaper. Okay. Google, of course, helps to kind of, just maybe Google in, what's the average cost of, looking at meals, maybe in that country, right? You can Google that. Lonely Planet guidebooks, that will also help you, but make sure they have the most recent data, because we know past 2 years we've been fighting some inflation and prices of everything have gone up. So if you're looking at, say, 2020 prices, you know that those are not accurate. So you want to make sure you have accurate information, of course, to help you budget and look at those big ticket items, meals, figuring out how much you might need per meal. Are you like me? When I travel, I only eat 2 meals when I travel because I am going to be eating out, right? And typically for breakfast, I might just have a coffee, right? Or maybe a coffee and a croissant when I was in Paris, right? But typically I limit it to 2 meals. Unless we are somewhere where we can actually cook our meals, then I will be doing probably 3 meals. So think about that. How much are your meals going to cost? Transportation. Now, if you're going to be in a bigger city, you can obviously use public transportation, which is going to save you lots of money. But maybe you're somewhere more remote and you need to rent a car. Okay? Again, you can do some research, go to all those car, there's Budget, there's Avis, there's Enterprise, and you can look at all those and see what the average price for renting a car would be for that week that you'll be at that destination. Okay, I would keep a spreadsheet maybe you're an Excel guru, or just write it down on a piece of paper, what these line items are going to cost you. Okay, look at your airfare, which obviously has to be paid up front. Accommodations, likely they'll want a deposit that's paid up front. Meals and transportation will happen during your time there. So write those out and then look at, if I split this cost into 7 days, what am I spending each day, or how much do I need to spend for each meal? Because that's going to help you for this kind of the 4th step I'm going to give you today. But number 3 is we don't want to forget any ancillary cost to consider. These are things such as maybe a checked bag fee. Some airlines do charge for this. So you want to make sure you're keeping that in mind. I have traveled and have forgotten about that. And I think, I forget where we were going, but I want to say it was $60 for me to check a bag one way, which was ridiculous. But so not an expense I was counting on. I know most check bag fees are either $25 to $30 each way. So just be aware of those fees, any visa fees you might have. Travel insurance, it's relatively inexpensive, but still make sure you're budgeting and planning for that. And then if you're doing any kind of tours or a cruise or anything like that that requires you to pay a little extra for what they call the single supplement as a solo traveler, make sure you are putting that as a line item as well as you're looking at all the money that you're going to need to have before you go. All right. So we want to make sure we have all this money before we go. And money, of course, for you want to buy things when you're there, right? You want to buy things to remember your trip, whether it's souvenirs that you like to buy, or maybe it's something that you like to buy to remind you of the trip. My son, when he travels, he tries to buy a piece of artwork, typically done maybe by a street artist, someone local, and some other things. Like just every trip he goes on, he tries to buy something like that as a remembrance. Maybe you collect something, right? And so each place you go to, you pick up this collectible item, or this, some people it's just magnets or whatever it is. Maybe you just like to get a t-shirt at each place that you go. Whatever that may be, you want to allow some money. Maybe you want to buy gifts for people, right? You're always going to find really cool things in other countries possibly that you're going to want to use maybe as gifts. So make sure you're allowing some of that money there. And then just buffer it a little bit with a little extra, because sometimes extra expenses come up, or you don't anticipate things being quite as expensive as your previous research had shown you. So part of what's going to help you stay on budget is keeping track of your expenses while you are traveling. So obviously you're not going to have your computer or laptop, or maybe not a pen or paper to track this stuff and write it down. Maybe you're a pen and paper type of person, or you try to keep the receipts, right? And it gets a little messy. There are several apps out there that will help you keep tabs on what you spend. And the recommendation is, as soon as you make that purchase, whether it's a lunch meal, you pull your app out and you put in that amount, and it will track. It will take out from your, say you have line items maybe just for meals, right? It'll take out from there, or daily budget, right? It'll take out from the daily amount. There's also some of the apps offer sort of a category where you're preparing for your trip, things that you would pay for beforehand, such as your flight or some of your accommodations. So those could be separate line items. But I have 3 apps that I highly recommend that I have used and do like. So Wanderlog is the first one that I've started to use pretty recently, and I really like it. It is known to have it's the best free version out there. So all of these apps have a free version, but all of them also have upgraded versions, which when you upgrade, obviously you get some more things that you can do, more categories maybe, so that it's less basic. But Wanderlog actually is the best one that has the free version. So you can download that and play with it, see if you like it, first of all, and maybe you still want to do the upgrade. So you have a little extra ways to track and just other little perks, right, with that little extra upgrade, right? Then there is TravelSpend, which I've also used, and that works well. They're all very similar in how they operate, right? You put in your budget, and then you can also put a daily budget, the overall budget, and you can name your trip. Some of them, you have those separate categories, like I said, like preparing for your trip beforehand. Trail Wallet, Trail Wallet, and this is actually for Apple only though. So, and I would recommend on that one, you do not have to pay for an upgrade on that one to add categories. So that is a nice thing on that particular app. Now for Android users, a similar app like Trail Wallet is Trabee Pocket. It's very similar in how it operates, and that's Trabee Pocket. I will put the names of these in the show notes, but Wanderlog is kind of the newer one that's out there and getting a lot of exposure, and I'm really liking it a lot actually as I'm playing with it, because I'm using it for a trip that I'm doing over the summer. So it's kind of very, very nice. So you want to track this stuff, right? And that's going to be important during your travels. I know we get really wrapped up in, really enjoying the moment, but if you want to go home after your travels and feel this relief of not having incurred any additional debt, it will be so freeing, and you'll be able to start saving for your next trip right away versus trying to catch up from that last one that you just finished. So it can be a little bit of a letdown. So go ahead and download one or all of those apps so that for your next trip, and if you've already started, maybe you need to put your airfare in, go ahead and get that added. Start doing those research points that I gave you on things to consider as you are budgeting and how to track those expenses, okay? So don't forget, every Friday I'm doing an extra episode here in June. I hope you have enjoyed the last two. Please join me on Friday. It's a quick little 5-minute summer travel tip episode that you can just quickly listen to, and hopefully it will help with any of your stressful summer travels that you might have coming up. All right. Hey, sister travelers, did this podcast inspire and encourage you or move you to get out there and travel? Wonderful. There are 3 ways you can thank me. First one is leave a written review for the show on Apple Podcast. 2, share the show with your sister travelers, your friends, your family. And 3, subscribe to the show so you never miss an episode. And thank you again for listening to the show. Sisters, be fearless, take the leap, and get out there and have an adventure.